All right, welcome back to Minnesota Sports Live. We are back with our good friend Alex Zappa. He is back again. Zaps, we brought you back a second time because we got to talk about these Wolves and the Lynx starting up. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, it's a true honor to be a reoccurring guest at this point. I'm alongside two studs. I'm just trying to fit in as much as I can, and I'm excited to talk some hoops because it's summer. Why not talk hoops when it's summer? Giddy up.
Absolutely.
Giddy up. Let's go. So, Zaps, we got to talk about these Wolves, man.
Yep.
Finish off the season 42-40. They do make the playoffs, losing 5 games to the Denver Nuggets. There's a lot that's been talked about in this offseason. Obviously, the Rudy Gobert trade. People are saying this is the worst trade in history, but we're not done yet. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's been talk about Cat too. Like, is he going to be here? Is he not going to be here? And is this officially Ant's team now? So let's start off, Zaps, with the Rudy Gobert trade.
Okay.
A lot of people on the socials medias, as we like to call it here on Minnesota Sports Live, have been talking and saying, like, this is the worst trade of all time. What's wrong with this Wolves team and whatnot? What are your overall thoughts on, Rudy Gobert this season? And I mean, where are some areas do you think that he can improve on here?
I'll tell you, I remember being on this show and saying I loved this trade. And
Right.
now I got to take a little bit of my medicine because it didn't turn out great so far. Now, and Matt, you said it. It's not done with. We still have some room to tread as far as where things go. I think the biggest surprise was how good Walker Kessler was immediately, right? I think obviously, if Tim Conley thinks that Walker Kessler is going to do that, you don't make that trade. So Walker Kessler, I think he finished top 5 in field goal percentage. I think he finished top 4 in blocks per game. And I mean, he beat Rudy in both those categories and played, I think, 30% less minutes. So you have to tip your cap to Walker Kessler, but also like we drafted him. So I'm also kind of proud of us. He was probably the 3rd best rookie this year. I think he finished 30 rookie. Here's the thing that the thing I missed, and I think most people missed, is how much you have to cater your offense to a player like Rudy Gobert, and how, D'Angelo Russell, it's been reported, did not get along with Rudy Gobert very well.
Right.
We sent him out I shouldn't say we, I'm not a part of the Timberwolves. They sent him packing for a reason. And I would say a lot of that was locker room based. On the court, sure, but also in the locker room. It was reported that D'Lo would be commenting very loudly about how Rudy missed this pass or this dunk. And it seemed like, you don't pass it to Rudy on the block 4 possessions when you should have. And then the 5th time when you do is the one time you shouldn't have. And then it's a turnover. Right. And so the luck of it didn't go our way. I think Rudy at 30 years old this past season showed diminishing athleticism for the first time ever. He's coming off a defensive of the year performance. And you think of we signed Joe Mauer to his big contract after the MVP season. He goes to first base in a couple years. We trade for Jimmy Butler, and then all of a sudden he's cussing out our franchise players in practice within 9 months. We finally invest in an NBA superstar, defensive star, I would say. And then it's the year that he doesn't fall off a cliff, but starts to regress a little bit. And so, it's so Minnesota sports. Again, I want to say it's not done yet, but it was fairly alarming how Rudy Gobert's defense did not live up to what we expected. And then his inability to be the force he has been on offense, his defense did not make up for that. His defense was average, I would say, this past year. So it's tough. It's really tough. But we're paying him a lot of money, and he's still a good asset. Not nearly the asset that we traded for, but the guy works his tail off. He's in great shape. I know he wants to be good and be prolific in this sport, which again might sound kind of obvious, but there's a lot of players in the NBA that are just happy to be there, that don't aspire to be great. He is one of those guys. He puts in the time and the effort. So is he in a position for a comeback year? Yes. But this also feels to me a little bit like Roy Hibbert on the Indiana Pacers, where all of a sudden his ability was just irrelevant. And I
Yeah.
think league is going to a place with its positionlessness that a player like Rudy Gobert is starting to lose his value. And so we'll see what Finch and the staff do this year to adjust. But there needs to, we saw that from this last year, there has to be adjustments. He has to get better.
Right.
And at 31 years old, will he come back better? That's a very interesting question.
You know what's interesting about it too is like I've watched a handful of games, and there are times where he was brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant. And you're like, oh, okay, I see why they traded for him and whatnot. But then there's games where he's almost disappeared and whatnot, and his defense isn't as good, and that's why they brought him in and all that stuff. So, there's a lot of factors into it. But I also want to, address obviously the big one towards the end of the season, the altercation between Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert.
Yes.
I almost think heat of the moment. I feel like all of us at some point, heat of the moments, you say some things that you regret and whatnot. But knowing what we know with Rudy Gobert and how things went with him and D'Lo and whatnot, I mean, is this something that we should be concerned about with the future with Gobert kind of being people not liking Gobert and things like that? Or is it just Kyle Anderson, kind of slow-mo kind of being, like what kind that relationship seemed kind of, not great, but at the same time, they apologized and things like that. But down the road here, I mean, do you foresee this kind of being a locker room problem here? Maybe, going into next year?
You have a really interesting situation where Kyle Anderson comes in, was not a starter to start the year, making what I think $13-14 million. And with the Towns injury, he became arguably one of the fundamental players we needed to play well to win games. And so all of a sudden you have Rudy Gobert, who's making more than 2 times as much as he is, who is the reason we're losing some of these games.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a battle of egos, right? Kyle Anderson doesn't give a crap about any of that. He doesn't care how much you're making. He doesn't care what they traded for it. He wants you to try hard. He wants you to be in the right position. He expects you to do your job. And Rudy Gobert in that situation messed up. And Rudy's pride, I think, got in the way, along with Kyle's. Kyle should not have pushed him that far in public, but it was Rudy's inability to submit to that criticism that caused that whole thing to happen. Now, 3 games later, it's Kyle Anderson throwing Rudy Gobert a lob and he's dunking it, and they're pointing to each other. 4 games later, Rudy Gobert misses a free throw and they need him to make the second one, and Kyle Anderson is putting his head to his head and putting his hand on his chest saying, I got you. And so to your point, this is sport. It's the heat of the moment. Guys get past this. The thing I will say that's, why I'm in my position a little bit behind the scenes is Rudy's an interesting guy. And he's European. His social media is very interesting if you follow it closely enough.
Right.
And so he is very unconventional, and he doesn't necessarily have the same culture or flow or vibe that a lot of American players have. And that's a conflict point. You saw Donovan Mitchell get pretty sick of him by the end of his time in Utah. Like, there was a lot of conflict there. And so I think Rudy's maybe the thing he might need to check with himself is he walks really tall. I mean, literally he's 6'7", 3.
Right.
But he has this air about him that's, I'm a 2-time defensive player of the year. Like, I'm great.
Yeah.
Whereas the teammates say, you can't handle a bounce pass. So there's this discrepancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the conflict comes in, is Rudy, and rightfully so, thinks he's this amazing player, and he is. But these American players who aren't making as much as him, who aren't as famous as him, who haven't won as many awards as him, get frustrated when the guy's missing dunks, get annoyed when he's not doing his one job, which is to get across on, we need that weak side block. Why aren't you stuffing the guard that beat me to the rim? That's your job, Rudy. And so long story short, I think you need to leave feelings, in the locker room. And when you get on the court, you got to play. And Rudy Gobert competes most of the time really hard. But to what you said kind of earlier, Matt, there were a lot of games where at halftime he's got 2 points and 3 rebounds and nothing else. Right. And we're down by 11 points. So I think it's a bigger issue than just Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert. I think it's really a disconnect between the value Rudy sees in himself and what the other players see. And there needs to be some sort of reconciliation of who you are, what you are, and what your role is, and how we're going to interact with each other. So it is something that is going to be interesting. Is Rudy, this is actually a really good point. He's somewhat turning into a Russell Westbrook, where you used to be great, like a Carmelo Anthony. You used to be fantastic. But how are you going to respond when literally your role needs to decrease because if it's increased, it's detrimental to the team? And that's what I think the players saw. And I think Chris Finch, along with this front office, felt compelled to give him the benefit of the doubt, felt compelled to play him into the ground so he could hopefully figure it out. And after 90 games, he just didn't. So does he come off the bench? Would he come off the bench? I think readjusting our expectations, unfortunately, of who he is, not only us as fans, I think also the media, and then also the Timberwolves organization is going to be really important. How do we see him going forward? And if we leave behind the past and just look at this player right now, what should he be? How many minutes should he play? How many touches should he get? That's the really interesting thing that's going to come into this year, and how Rudy Gobert handles that and how the team handles that, I think is going to be very indicative of how the 2023-2024 Wolves operate this year.
And again, we haven't even touched free agency or anything like that too. So I mean, it's crazy, but that was absolutely well said too. Now here's another name that we need to bring up here, and it's quite prominent. A lot of people on the social medias, again, karlanthonytowns. You look at with the playoff situation. He's been in the playoffs. He's been in round one. They've exited in round one a lot. And a lot of people kind of point the finger at Cat sometimes, whereas he's only getting kind of somewhat similar to the Gobert thing, where it's like, okay, he's only getting 10 points and 4 rebounds, a game. And it's like, what's going on here? Do you think, and, whether or not that Cat should be dealt this offseason, where if they deal Cat, then the organization is saying this is Ant's team. And I feel like there's almost these butting heads in some way a little bit, because you're paying Cat to be the guy, but Anthony is coming right up too. So,
and they've always said it too, right?
Yeah.
The organization, until about halfway through this year, was extremely clear about this is our franchise player. And then that started to stop. Voldy, not to cut you off, Matt, but Voldy, when we talk about Karl-Anthony Towns, what do you think of him as a player? Is he a superstar to you? Is he a fan favorite to you? Do you like him? As someone who is not super close, what's your take? Right. I'm genuinely curious.
I feel like if we were talking Karl-Anthony Towns like 3 years ago, I would say he's definitely a fan favorite. But now it's like at the point now where he's missing more games than he's actually playing. Yes, injuries are a thing too, but you throw in as well the fact that he's not producing at the level of what he once was. And of course, he goes out and wins the 3-point shooting contest, the All-Star game. Hey, that's great, but how's that going to translate into wins that we need to get past the play-in games, let alone getting into the playoffs as well? Hey, that's great and all, but what are we going to do to try and make a playoff push beyond that? Now it's just we're at a kind of a boiling point right now. It's like it's kind of a put up or shut up kind of moment right now with him. And I mean, you go into this off season too with the possibility of him being looked at as trade bait. And I mean, at this point, you ask me right now if I would lose any sleep if Karl-Anthony Towns got traded. No, I personally wouldn't. but I'm not emotionally invested in the Timberwolves as a lot of people that probably watch this program, if not, in the state of Minnesota too, or just Wolves fans in general. But that's just my 2 cents about it. I just really think now we're just like, yeah, he's great, but like, what else can we maybe translate into moving forward, especially with this new ownership group that wants to put their stamp on something, as opposed to the old regime. This was kind of their calling card too, as they're kind of send out like, hey, we drafted Karlanthonytowns, but like, A-Rod and Mark Laurie are looking at like, maybe we need to, kind of cut bait here and try to land the big fish, if you will, too.
I love that. I think I will say this: the fans do still really respond to him at Target Center. I think
sure.
fans,
For sure.
and they love Ant too. And they're kind of different loves in a sense. I think the interesting with Karl-Anthony Towns is, first of all, for his size and his position, the things he's done is unprecedented. I mean, he's averaging basically 50-40 for his career. Like, there's guards that don't do that. And so, and his rebounding has diminished a little bit, but rebounds are a little bit fluky in my opinion. It's a lot about effort and timing and circumstance too. So, the thing so I just want to get that very clear, that offensively, he's one of my favorite players to watch in that. He's basically unstoppable, because at the top of the key, if you give him space, he's going to shoot a three, and that's one of the best shots in basketball. A Karl-Anthony Towns 3-point shot is one of the best shots in the NBA. Printed. If you get close to him, he's going to drive past you if it's a center. And if it's a smaller guard, he's going to body you. Now, here's the problem. He's going to body you too much, and he's going to get an offensive foul. And so the thing with Karl-Anthony Towns that we've seen in the playoffs, you think of Memphis last year, where he was frankly bad, very bad. Denver series, he was actually really good. Like, we needed his scoring. I thought he played very well. He still does not have, at his age, and will it come, an ability to eliminate bad decisions. And it's the simple things. Nikola Jokic doesn't get in foul trouble. Want to know why? Because his team is totally screwed if he does. Towns does not have a championship mindset as far as what it takes to win games at crucial moments. And he isn't a guard, so he can't affect the game in that way as frequently at the end of the games. And then when he does get the ball, I find him panicking a lot. And I find him reverting to moves that, if the defense is playing smart, they're going to lure a foul out of him. They're going to flop, and they're going to get the call. So I think the reason the trade buzz is happening very loudly is because for the first time ever, we could trade him and fans wouldn't get pissed off, because we have an Anthony-Edwards. Like, you couldn't do this before. Like, okay, then we're in the worst team in the NBA. That wouldn't happen if we traded him now. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is his value, as far as what we would receive, is potentially greater than what his value actually is. And that is not an indictment on Karl-Anthony Towns. It's simply his contract, his ability, and what other teams would be willing to give up to get a franchise-esque player like he is. Now, I think Portland is really interesting. You're telling me you give us the 3 pick. You also give me, maybe throw in Anthony Simons, maybe Yusuf Nurkic, and then you give me 2 other first-round picks, and I'm guaranteed to get Scoot Henderson or Miller out of Alabama. I don't know what I would do. So it's very frisky. I love Cat. I think he's gotten criticized for kind of always saying the right thing and not maybe having good intent. Well, guess what? I want a player that says the right thing. And he has never once asked for a trade. You've never heard that rumor. From day one, he has always said he wants to win here. And that means something to me. As a fan, I've been a fan my whole life. We have a star that wants to be here. Yeah. And he has a humongous chip on his shoulder. But again, let's talk about disconnects. Karl-Anthony Towns wins the 3-point contest. And what is he saying? I told y'all. I told you so. I told you. And instead, who likes that guy? Who likes the I told you so guy? I want someone who wins humbly, who lets other people kind of be like, oh, he he was right. Maybe he was the best shooting big man. You don't want someone to tell you. So he has some maturing to do. He has some basketball IQ to pick up still along the way. And I think his defense is average. And so can your offense be great enough to surpass what your deficit is? And I thought it was very, we played Denver. Look at what Jimmy Butler as an 8th seed has done. Jimmy Butler has taken Jason Tatum's lunch. Guess what? Jason Tatum finished 4th in MVP voting this year. Okay. Any series, anything can happen. I was expecting Cat to do 35, 15, and 2 and take Nikola Jokic out of the game. Like, I thought that could happen, but it didn't happen. So can Karl-Anthony-Towns be a Jimmy Butler where, okay, regular season, whatever, we do what we can to get in, but then I'm great. And I would say Towns is almost the opposite of that, is from what we've seen in his career. Great regular season player, great stats, but when the pressure gets on, he hasn't played his best basketball. That can change any year, anytime, any series, but that's why the trade rumors are circulating, because you could get a great price for him. It would reset the franchise. And after losing 4 first-round picks to Rudy Gobert, you could get those all back. So it's never made more sense. What the Timberwolves decide to do is very indicative of what they think of how quick they think they can win. And looking at the Western Conference, a Lakers team that to me is average, going up a Denver team that is great, but in my opinion, beatable and not nearly the caliber of the Western Conference teams we've seen come out in recent years. Think of Golden State and all those teams. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know he's a great player. I know he wants to be here, and I would miss him because he's a very special player. He's a very unique player, but at the same time, what you get might be more valuable than what he is, and that's a decision Tim Conley and Chris Finch are going to have to make.
So let's move on to these Lynx here. They're starting up their season, my friend, and you are quite excited. I could tell from the Bally Sports North social media account, you were pretty stoked and getting the fans ready to go. So what are your thoughts on the Lynx coming up this year and whatnot? A little bit of a work in progress, would you say, with this Lynx team, Zaps?
It is. They're on the rebuild for sure. I mean, Sylvia Fowles is gone after a historic career and WNBA all-time leader in rebounds. Won a handful of championships, pretty good. Napheesacollier, one of the most exciting players in the W, is back after being on maternity. She did play 4 games towards the end of last year, but it really just to hopefully push us into the playoffs, which didn't quite happen.
Right.
We also got the number. I mean, Cheryl Reeve had her first losing season in 7 years. And so we got the number 2 overall pick, and we got Diamondmiller out of Maryland, who is a freak athlete. She is immediately a plus defender. And the question, and I've talked to Cheryl Reeve about this, is can we get her an offensive package? She's a little bit of a freestyler out there. She kind of takes every shot. And if you look at the NBA or the WNBA, the best players have a package. They have about 6, maybe 5, 6 fundamental shots that they take. And when you watch players warm up, they practice these shots. So for Diamond, it's what are my go-to shots? How do I score consistently? In the preseason, she shot 32%. In the opener, she was 3-9. We needed to be better than that. So it's really exciting to have a high draft pick. We haven't had one of those in forever. Yeah. And the thing with the W's, I mean, there's the super teams, right? The Aces are coming off a championship. They have Kelsey Plum, one of the best point guards in the league. Jackie Young is one of the best guards in the league. Aja Wilson's one of the best centers there. Gray is one of the best veterans in the league. You got the Liberty, who got Ionescu, and then they also added Jonquel Jones and Brianna Stewart. So in the W, there's 2 incredible teams. I would say the Connecticut Sun and the Mystics are kind of right behind them. And then there's a humongous middle, and we are a part of that middle. So the opener, or the home opener, I was at that game. You referenced it, Matt. We won 3 quarters. Guess what? In the second quarter, we scored 3 points. And that is the fundamental problem of this year's team, is we don't have necessarily bucket getters. Napheesacollier is a great player. She's a great all-around player. I would not say she's an elite ISO scorer. Now, she's great at that. But it's something that she's going to have to work at. She did not shoot the ball very well in the opener. She had 5 turnovers. It was a bad game for her. Now, again, she's on the comeback trail still, but she looks great. Physically, she looks closer to the player we saw in 2020, 2021. Jess Shepard's a really exciting center that had a great year in her 3rd year last year and can build off of it. Rachel Bannum started the opener, former Gopher, former Panther. Now she had 0 points. She also had a terrible game, and she would be the first person to tell you that. Tiffany Mitchell, a veteran who we brought in after 6 seasons with the Indiana Fever, she had a terrible game too. I think she had 2 points. So our point guards, I think, put up a total of less than 5 points. So that can't happen.
Right.
But the thing I want to tell fans is this is a very exciting team. This is a very young team. This is a team that's going to work really hard. And Cheryl Reeve is going to coach the out of this team. I mean, in the preseason, she was losing her mind. And I love that from Cheryl. So it's a really cool fan base. If you haven't been to a game, please go to a game at Target Center. It's such a unique experience. Basically, you get a lower bowl ticket. You can sit anywhere. It's really a free-for-all. It's very cool. It's so friendly. I mean, you see it's, and I'll be honest, it's a very LGBTQ plus crowd. But there's young families. Okay, I see a couple bros hanging out as well. It's a very welcoming group, and it's an organization that really cares about their fans. And the president and the GM will be in the stands during the game talking to fans. They're not up in a suite. Okay, they're not in their back offices. They're in the community there with these people. So it's a great organization. It's a great group of young women. And I have a lot of hope for this team. They're very good people and they have talent. Can it be synchronized? Can they sync it up together? That's going to be really interesting. Cause Matt, to your point, this will not be the year, but this could set the precedent for what I think could actually be next year. So how good can they be this year? Who's to say? And then again, 2 years ago, the Chicago Sky crashed into the playoffs with a 500 record and they won the dang thing. So you're always an injury away from all of a sudden you're competitive in a 4-versus-1 series as far as seeding is concerned. You just got to get to the dance. So that's the reason to follow this Lynx team this year. They have a real opportunity to make the playoffs. And if they do, all bets are off. Again.
Well, I'm sold. Voldy, how about you?
I mean, I definitely I have no more reason whatsoever than to get to a game down at the Target Center to check out the Lynx for sure.
Now, don't burn it to the ground with the
stuff. D'Lo's gone. That's fine now.
That's true. So a little backstory to that, Zaps. When we first started the show and when the Wolves were in talks to get D'Angelo Russell, there was a lot of Photoshop D'Angelo Russell.
Bad
Wolves.
Photoshop.
Yeah, bad Photoshop, excuse me. And Voldy said, if I see one more bad Photoshop of it, I'm going to go to the Target Center and burn it to the ground. So in case you were wondering.
Okay, well, if there's an arson attack, I will plead the fifth because I never heard anything. I never heard anything. So that's okay.
Exactly. Perfect.
There you go. Well, I'm going to throw it over to Voldy for some rapid fire.
All right. So we got a few things here. Kind of touching back with the Timberwolves this season too, and if maybe just interview from this whole season. There's like maybe one moment you remembered talking to a certain player or somebody involved with the Timberwolves that you kind of look back as maybe that was an interesting moment, or just that just stands out in your mind.
Yes. I mean, off the top of my head, the Timberwolves this year had a really great event at the downtown Target where every player on the active roster was matched up with a kid from the Boys and Girls Club, and they got a $500 gift card and they got to shop around. Now there's a bunch of media, there's a bunch of people here, and I'm kind of tooting my own horn here, but I have to, is that Anthony Edwards, who I've again interviewed the past few years on Media Day. We had him on Wolves Plus, the show I produce. Like you build relationships with these people. And so he comes off the elevator, he's with all the guys, there's all these people, and he sees me and I kind of give him a nod, and he came over and he dabbed me up and he's like, "You good?" I'm like, "I'm good." And then whenever I would, Matt, you mentioned for Bally Sports North, once a week, I'll kind of go to a game and I'll do some behind the scenes stuff. And he would always just kind of give me a nod and say, "What's up?" So I think more to your point, Voldy, Anthony Edwards being someone who, look at his Instagram. He's not posting every week. The guy barely posts every month. Like he does not care about being a star.
Right.
He cares about being a great basketball player. So just little small things like there's a humanity to him that is very important and very meaningful. And so Anthony Edwards' development this year and ability to be great. And also his defense in that Denver series was crazy.
Yeah.
So Anthony Edwards, for me is the guy. Like I love him to death. I think he's supremely talented. And I think he is someone I'm excited for. And this was supposed to be rapid fire. And then I think I just did about 2 minutes. So I apologize. But shout out to Anthony Edwards. Great dude.
So hopefully this answer will just kind of come off the top of your head. Which superpower would you rather have? The Jaden McDaniels punching power or Ant's chair throwing ability?
You know what? Give me Jaden's very scrawny arms and the lethal density to those punches in that muscle. Oh God, Jaden McDaniels, holy moly. But again, the guy cares. He cares too much. Okay.
Yeah, this is true.
You love to see that passion. That's a positive spin. How about that? You love to see the passion.
Yeah.
You love to see it one way or another. How many years until the ownership group of Alex Rodriguez, Mark Lore wins the title here with the Timberwolves?
Oh man. I'm gonna say, and this is bold, I'm gonna say within the next 8 years.
8 years.
Because it's all about Anthony Edwards. I think Anthony Edwards, if he stays here, is going to win a title at or before 30 years old. I have a lot. So as long as Ant is here, that is my time bomb. And I think before he's 30, I would be shocked if we are not in an NBA Finals. And I think if Anthony Edwards gets to an NBA Finals, I think he's doing the Jordan. I think he's doing the Joe Montana. I think he's going to have a perfect record. So, Goldie, give me 8 years. 8 years till we win the whole dang thing.
I love it. I love it. And also, we kind of briefly touched on a couple of names with the Lynx, but is there one or two players that we should definitely be keeping our eye out this season with the Lynx to maybe make their big splash or maybe make that next step with this group?
I mean, it's obvious, but I think napheesacollier, if things go right, she could win an MVP award. So I think that's something. Does she become a Deladon? Does she become a Brianna Stewart? Does she become an Aja Wilson? That's what the track she's on. Diamondmiller's the number 2 overall pick, and she's just going to be really exciting to see and play. And then I'm going to say the hometown girl, Rachel Banham, like Minnesota's own, like high-end shooter. I think she was the 4th overall pick in 2016. Like was
the Maroon
drafted,
Mamba.
Yeah, was drafted to be, and that's a great pull by you, Voldy. I forgot about that. Her and Kobe were like legitimately friends before he passed away. Shouts up to Aiden before. So I'd say Banham, Miller, and Fee, all for different reasons, are very and then I'm also going to say this. Nina Milic was a 28-year-old rookie last year. She's like our kind of backup center, but the fans love her. She's really tall, very strong, and someone who I just think is really sneaky and could be a real huge advantage coming off the bench, and someone that you just love. Like, she doesn't even speak great. I mean, she can speak English, but not great. Like, we would, and this is kind of behind the curtain, but we would want to interview her, and the PR department was just kind of, she's not quite ready yet. And that's okay. Like, perfectly cool. But so give me those 4. And then the other 8 as well. I like everyone on the Lynx team.
Everyone. And it kind of answered the question a little bit with the Timberwolves. So you think the Lynx will win a title before the Timberwolves do with this, the group that they've got right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think honestly, I think the Timberwolves are closer. Now, the difference is there's 30 teams in the association. There's 12 in the dub. So
true.
It's just, statistically, it's much easier. Cheryl Reeves also done it. It's an organization that's done it. So actually, let me backtrack that. I think it will be the Lynx. And I'll tell you why. I think if he stays, Diamond becomes a great player. We're one big free agent away from being a top contender. So give me the Lynx. Give me the Lynx in the next 6 years. Why not?
I like it.
Mark,
that's all I got for. That's
Sharpie.
What I got. I like it. I love it. That's all I got for rapid fire.
We're marking it down. I love it. All right, one last thing, Zaps, before you go. How's the acting career? Where are we at with that, my friend? What do we got?
So Mary Kiss Cam came out on Hulu this past winter. So you want to see a very average Christmas movie? Go check it out. I filmed an indie movie this winter that is coming out at some point. I don't know when or where. I did a TV pilot last summer that called The Wedding Show that I just went in and did some ADR for, which is basically voiceover for scenes that they're trimming, or if they couldn't understand what I was saying because I slurred my words or something, they had me redo it. So that will be done soon, and that's going to be shopped around, and that could get picked up by a streamer. But I'll tell you what, Matt, it's been a little cold lately. No movies on the horizon. I have not booked anything. But that's still the dream. I did produce a short film that I'm in the process of editing. We shot that about a couple months ago, hoping to get that into festivals this winter. But that's still the dream. I mean, I love sports and I love acting. And I think between the two of them, I want to be close to them forever. But thank you for asking, because it's new for me, but I love it. And it's been so fun. I've had some cool opportunities, and I hope I can get some more.
Yeah. But Zaps, we appreciate you coming on, talking some Wolves, talking some Lynx, and probably have you on again here soon, because you came up pretty close in best guest from last year as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're starting off pretty hot in 2023, my friend.
I'm on the revenge tour. I'm coming for that tournament. I need to win, and I'll do anything to come back on. And low key, I was late. I was late for this. Lily and Matt waited for me because they're legends. I totally dropped the gun. I was playing pickleball. I took a long shower, and I was, I think, 13 minutes late to this. So I appreciate the fellas staying up. I love talking to you guys. You guys are the best, and I'll do it anytime, anywhere, any place.
All right, Zaps. We'll talk to you later, my friend.
Peace, guys.